Hello everyone and welcome back to the Michelle Languages YouTube channel. So today I highly requested a video from you guys both on YouTube and on Instagram, and we're gonna talk about how I'm studying Korean from Japanese. So I want to give you first of all a little bit of background knowledge about my Korean studies, because I tried to learn Korean twice in my life before actually committing really seriously, or at least trying to stay consistent, late 2020. So the first attempt was around 2018, 2019, I do not remember to be honest, but I bought a secondhand book from a friend of mine in university, and it was written in Italian, but it was terrible. It was basically a textbook course, like this, but everything was explained poorly. The grammar was explained like in a very weird way. I don't know how to express my feelings towards that book, but that's why I gave up. I just learned a little bit of Hangul, which is the Korean alphabet, and then I started to learn Korean from English, of course. If you start learning Korean with international resources, especially if you're not a native English speaker, you always stumble upon Talk to Me Korean, which, by the way, I think is really good, but it's not really good for me at least. And then after a couple of months with Talk to Me Korean, I decided to integrate also Go Billy's videos about like beginner course. Yeah, but the months passed. It was summer 2020, and actually I noticed a really weird thing in my notes. Because when I was taking down notes, I wrote like the explanation or maybe a couple of examples. So not copying and pasting everything that was said, but basically taking notes. And what I noticed is that I always wrote down the Japanese correspondent. So like, for example, about particles. Urul is the topic market in Korean and O is the topic market in Japanese. So basically the same thing. They do the same work. And I noticed this kind of pattern in my notes like every time. Japanese was everywhere. So it was around like October 2020. I was looking for language videos because I'm really into YouTube things. I really like watching videos related to my passions like social media, language learning, vlogs. And I stumbled upon a Lindy video, Lindy Boats, of course. And she basically shared her experience learning Japanese through Korean resources. And I basically had the most brilliant idea I ever had in my whole life. So bear with me and my head, okay? So this was basically the thought that occurred in my mind. If Lindy learned Japanese from Korean books, I can learn Korean from Japanese books. Even though in Japanese I'm lower intermediate and I'm approaching the intermediate level, I thought maybe I can give it a go. So I decided to go on Amazon Japan and scroll a little bit all the resources that I've found. And I stumbled upon this amazing series that you always see at my posts on Instagram, which is the Dekiru Kankokugo. So this is the series that has been helping me a lot with learning Korean. Actually, it's not really that difficult to understand, especially because if you already know Japanese grammar, and I suggest to approach this method when you are also an intermediate learner. You don't need to be really fluent or proficient, because the explanations over here are terribly easy to understand. And it's really, really nice, the structure of the book. And it's really simple, actually. It's really minimal. And we have, like, for example, let me show you a chapter. We have the dialogue, we have the vocabulary section, the grammar explanation, so bunke, and some exercises. So it's really, really minimal, really, really simple. And I decided to buy the workbook as well because I'm one of those people that, especially at the beginner stage of a language, needs to do lots of exercises. And I still haven't done all the exercises because I really didn't have the time to complete this one. But this baby, complete. So when I in learning mode, what I do is to try and do a 30 minutes minimum study session twice a week with the stats book. So what I do first day, like for example, when I start a new chapter, what I always do is practice with the dialogue. So I read, and sometimes I share also my tentatives on Instagram, even though I have a very weird accent. For me, Korean is really, really weird in terms of pronunciation, so I really need to practice a lot. But you know, practice makes perfect, or at least not perfect, but really good. And I always look up at the grammar. So during the first study session of approaching a new chapter, I always studied the grammar and try to understand everything. But as you can see, it's really, really easy to understand the Korean grammar because you have the Korean correspondent, and right over here, there's always the Japanese correspondent. So if you already studied the bunke, so the grammar pattern, for you, it's incredibly easy. So that's why I really like this book. There are also tons of examples, so it's really, really nice. I really fancy this book. And during the second study session, always with the main textbook, I do the exercises. So I try to complete the pages that are left for that chapter. And as you can see, the chapters are not really that long. They're like about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pages. And after 5 chapters, there's always a review section. So it's really, really, really nice. And during the weekend, usually when I study with my friends, when we gather all together to study languages or what we need to study, I try to do the workbook exercises in order to consolidate the knowledge that I got during the week. But I noticed something that it happens a lot with me, is that I can recognize grammar without really that much effort, but vocabulary-wise, I'm terrible. So what I decided to do is that once I finished the first book of the beginner, you see, Chokyu level of the Dekiru Kankokugo, was to enter in revision mode. So basically, when I am in revision mode, like right now, I usually take 1 month and a half to revise everything I did. So I created like a really brief study guide, like it was really like a translation homework, and I took all the Korean patterns that I studied and wrote the Japanese correspondent like in the other column. So for me, it's really like super rapid, and I tend to recognize them really, really fast. And in fact, with grammar, besides conjugation, which is something I really need to practice, I do not have that many difficulties in especially recognizing and using grammar when I need to write really simple sentences. But I'm terrible. I'm hella terrible with vocabulary. But what I always do is study vocabulary in Japanese. So right now that I'm in revision mode, I can explain this to you. I'm trying to study the vocabulary that was into my books and just the things that are really useful, because sometimes in this book there are really complicated words that I do not even know in Japanese and are not really useful when I need to communicate in my daily life. So as you can see at the in the last section of this book, there is a revision section, both for grammar, particles, like and there is also a section for vocabulary. So what I do is right now is creating flashcards on Quizlet They have Korean on one side and Japanese on the other side, and I still need to finish them and need to practice and play around with the Quizlet app for a little bit. And you will might say, how you do that? Because always switching the keyboard is really stressing. Actually, what I'm doing right now to create my flashcard on Quizlet is that I use my iPad because it's really convenient. I really like my iPad, even though I'm thinking about upgrading it. And Bay, my boyfriend, bought me this very cute English Korean keyboard on AliExpress. And if you're interested in purchasing something really similar, I can leave you the link in the description box, because it's really nice. You have already printed out everything, all of the hangul you need to use, because you can also buy the stickers on Amazon, and which is something I did in the past for my laptop. But after a couple of weeks, some letters like literally fade away, and I haven't used my laptop that much, so not really the best idea. But at least with this one, the job is super easy. And if you write especially the first, like the definition thing, or maybe, well, the first row you write in Korean, almost automatically Quizlet gives you the Japanese translation, the Japanese equivalent. So it's not time consuming at all. Like, I try to do daily like 30 minutes of vocab input, and I basically complete a page, and there are like less than 10 pages over here. So it's really nice, and I really want to play around with words. I want to try to come up with like with my own example sentences, like to try to play around with the grammar that I already know. So revision mode is now a crucial time for me, because even just 20 minutes per day, 30 minutes per day is super good, and it really helps strengthen my memory when it comes especially to vocabulary. And this is what I'm doing right now. And besides revising actively the things, of course, I try to stay immersed with the language. So at the moment, I'm really listening to a lot of Korean music, K-pop, K-R&B, K-indie lately. So I'm immersing myself a lot, especially in the music. But I'm planning to start maybe something new, maybe a new drama. I do not know, because I'm not really a drama girl, but I really enjoyed Startup during the first part of 2021. So I'm not really sure which drama will get my attention. So I do not know. But in the meantime, I'm watching several vlogs, like for example those of Yura. Yura is my favorite Korean, American Korean vlogger. Actually, she's Korean, but she's now in the US, so she always puts the subtitles in Korean, and that is really good. There's also Dashi, that is really nice. And actually, I have some suggestions, and I will write them down in the description box, because I also created a post about studying languages with vlogs, or at least trying to get as much vocabulary as you can from vlogs, because the really great thing is that vlogs talk about daily life, hobbies, passions, and if you resonate with the creator, like 95% of the time you will encounter vocabulary that will be useful for you. So that is really nice. And when I do not understand something, actually, when it comes to grammar, I use this book as reference to understand a little bit better what is going on with that grammar pattern and why maybe there are differences from Japanese, which is the Korean Grammar Induced for Beginners. A mistake that many learners do when it comes to this book is that they use this to study. But it's completely wrong. That is not the approach that you should have with this book. This is just a reference. So when you do not understand something from your main textbook or your main resources, that might be also a YouTube channel, you can come to this book and use it as a reference. Nothing more, nothing else, because otherwise you will get confused. The book is also groups patterns by topic, not by difficulty, not the usage. So you just really need to use this as a reference. And last but not least, at the end of the month, so when June will start, I think that I will go back into learning mode and we'll start using the second chokyu, so the second part of the beginner level of Dekiru Kankokugo. Because to be honest, grammar wise, I'm fine. I just need to train a little bit myself with conjugation. So this is something that I can do like almost daily. Like maybe try to conjugate verbs like 4 or 5 times. Like maybe take like 2 or 3 verbs and do the conjugation that I know, which are many, to be honest. There are many conjugations that I already studied, like modalities and tenses that I already studied. So we'll see. I will keep you updated. But I want to start learning something new because I really need to challenge myself a little bit. Because now that I'm in exam season, because you know, exam season here in Italy lasts like 2 or 3 months. And I also have an exam in September, so basically I will study all summer long. I really need to learn something new because all the things that I'm gonna do, especially for English and Japanese, is gonna be revise everything that I did during this academic year. But I want to add a little bit of spice, like the meme reference, and I want to really improve my Korean. And the really great thing that I noticed that when I'm progressing in Korean, I'm progressing in Japanese as well, especially when it comes to vocabulary, because maybe there are words that I encounter, but I actually do not remember that well. So it's like learning 2 languages, one price. It's not true, of course, but I feel more or less like this way. So guys, I really hope you appreciated the video, and if you have any other suggestions, please write them down in the comment section. Let's discuss together maybe how you are studying Korean, because we all come from different countries, we all have different backgrounds, so it would be really, really nice if you could share your experience in learning Korean in the comment section. Be sure to follow me on Instagram and on Twitch, because on Instagram I give daily tips and tricks on how to study in general and study languages as well, share a little bit about my academic experience and how I work as a language coach. And on Twitch you can find me for study sessions and for just chatting about learning, education, learning languages, and maybe also chit-chatting a little bit about our hobbies. So guys, I really hope you enjoyed this video and see you next time. Bye!